Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to inspire and motivate people to never give up on themselves or their dreams. We will chat with highly successful people from all walks of life and discuss what motivates and drives them to successfully attack life head on and never give up. Welcome to episode number 70 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Wirth, and today's theme of the day is warrior. Our quote of the day comes to us from Bo Taplin. You are fierce. You're a survivor. You're a fighter through and through. Little brave, breathe. There's a warrior within you. I'm extremely excited for today's episode. Not only have I known today's guest since 1995, but she happens to be a high school classmate of mine. Although we are not that close in high school, we have become very close over the past year and a half. I'm extremely grateful for both her friendship as well as her positive approach to life. When it comes to guests being open and real, I don't think we've had a more real guest in any way, shape, or form. She epitomizes the definition of a fighter and a warrior. In addition to being an incredibly beautiful woman on the outside, it's her inner beauty and her inner strength that is absolutely remarkable. I'm honored and extremely humbled to introduce my very good friend, Rebecca Babcock.
Rebecca, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
So in regards to our podcast and our No Quit Living theme, I know you have a pretty unique story about yourself in regards to your story of perseverance. And I was curious if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of that with our listeners.
I'd love to. And first of all, I should say, my voice might sound a little gravelly because Chris and I celebrated our 20th high school reunion last night. So I have a chronic illness called ulcerative colitis. I was diagnosed at 16. It's an autoimmune disease, and it's something that I've really dealt with my whole life, basically ever since Chris has known me. And it got to basically a fever pitch a year and a half ago where I was taking chemotherapy medications and 3 other infusion medications. I was giving myself shots. My disease had gotten to the point where it was pretty much untenable. So I had my colon removed in an emergency surgery, which was not the plan and pretty shocking. And from there, my first surgery was actually done, air quotes, incorrectly. That's the, I think that's the safe medical term for botched. And I had 3 medical emergencies with bowel obstructions, which we don't even need to get into, before having to have that surgery redone last September. And then I had a 3rd surgery in November, which is where they create something called a J pouch, which is a faux colon, and all of this info you'll get more on if you're interested in. And then just this last February/March, I had the last part of the surgery. So I sort of went through a 4-part odyssey medically that I was not ready for. I didn't know it was going to happen. It was very scary. It was also very humbling. This is a disease that affects the GI tract and has a lot to do with things people don't want to talk about. And so it's definitely a disease that has a lot of shame and embarrassment about it. So one of my greatest joys is being able to talk about it and share information and sort of be a channel for people to ask questions or learn more about it. I had an ostomy bag, which is basically that thing on the outside of your body. And, you know, so poop is a very often brought up topic in my life. And it was crazy and it was scary. And I didn't know if I'd live or die. I didn't know if I would have a job. I didn't know a lot of things. So definitely a topic I've come to know very well is perseverance.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us. And I think it's remarkable how you've done this and what you've done in your short period of the last year and a half. But I was curious, was there something that you read or were there people in your life that were just instrumental throughout the last year and a half?
I need to give a big shout out to my mom who's in the other room right now. So I'm single, which makes this a little bit of a different journey than if I had a spouse and kids. I don't know if it would have been easier or more difficult, but my family was so instrumental. My mother actually essentially moved in with me for a year. 4 surgeries and the recovery from 4 these are major surgeries, 6, 7, 8 hour surgeries with, a week or so each time in the hospital. My mom she gave up her life. She moved into my apartment. She helped me with my ostomy bags and all that crazy stuff. And my diet has been intense. The other thing that has been really incredibly valuable is the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, which, has just been so supportive and connected me with other people that have this disease, that have been through these surgeries, because there was not enough time, or there was no time to explain. I was in kidney failure, went into the hospital on a Tuesday, and on Friday my colon came out. So there was no research. And they had sent people over to the hospital to talk to me about life with an ostomy bag, life, the whole thing, which was really powerful. And I have a group of friends that were amazing. They visited me all the time. And I have a pretty strong faith that's not necessarily religiously based, but it's sort of this idea of like, everything's happening for a reason. And I have had a lot of people say to me, like, I'm so sorry this happened to you. And my feeling is, why not me? I'm the kind of person who's going to talk about it, hopefully help people and share about it. And, being in the mindset of why not me instead of why me has been one of the biggest aids in the process.
I'm so glad that you touch on that, because it's something that I find to be pretty remarkable is why not me? And I think one of the things we talk about often on our show is there's a very significant difference between people that talk about things and think about things versus people that do things. And I want to just commend you for not only sharing your story, but more importantly, taking action. That's one of the things that we're so focused on with our show and with our company is everybody has an idea, a concept, a business, a relationship idea, what have you. But the very significant difference is most people just do the thinking and the wanting and the wishing, and the thing we focus on is the actual action. So I wanted to commend you for the action component, because I think most people have their own stories of perseverance or no quit in some way, shape, or form. And I'm not going to say they're all similar or identical, because they're clearly not, nor am I going to tell you that I know what you're going through, having not been through it myself, but having watched and become closer with you over the last year or so. I just think it's remarkable, because I find that people have people in their corner in different phases of life. So I wanted to just give you an opportunity, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit. Before we went live, we talked a little bit about some of the research that has happened and some of the fundraising that you're doing, but more importantly, it's the awareness. So if you wouldn't mind touching on that.
Oh, thank you for asking. I think it's the most important thing. So this is IBD, which is irritable bowel disease, which runs the gamut from ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease and other things. It's generally what we talk about as a silent illness, and it can be very complicated. We were at our reunion last night, and I can't tell you how many people came up to me and said, "You look great." And it's a compliment, but it's a challenge, because I have an illness that's inside my body. And so if the disease presented externally the way it makes me feel internally, I think I get all this sympathy and all this, whatever, attention, credit, or whatever. Not that I'm looking for that, but it's all happening on the inside. And it's, GI problems, it's arthritis, it's hair loss, it's exhaustion, it's insomnia, it's side effects from medications. And we aren't talking about it because it has to do with diarrhea or constipation or rectal bleeding or hemorrhoids or things that we're in our societies all taught not to talk about. And so what happens is most people with IBD suffer in silence. And that is my biggest goal, is just to say, hey, if you want to talk about this, I will talk about anything you could ever want to talk about. And if we need to call it number 2, because that's where you are in your process of discussing it, we'll do that. And I'd say I don't go more than, 2 or 3 days without having somebody reach out to me who has a friend or a sibling or themselves that, through being actively open about this, want to talk to me. And sorry, guys. And that's been the key part, is like, we're a community, we help each other. And then the beauty of it is it spurs into things that aren't necessarily irritable bowel, but just there's a gamut of people that suffer from silent illnesses and have shame or fear about talking about it. And to Chris's point earlier, Chris, to your point, it's like me talking about it has only garnered positive reaction and support and opened up the dialogue, which is what I think we're all looking to do. So that's really the why not me. I'm the kind of person who's going to share about it.
I appreciate you sharing that, and I think that's interesting how you talk about a silent illness. And one of the things we talk about quite often is we want to motivate and inspire people through our podcast. And the reality is every single person is going through their own obstacles in life. And I don't think anybody can ever say they know exactly or they went through the exact same thing. But the reality is what you're dealing with. There are hundreds and thousands of people that are dealing with it, whether it's a friend, a spouse, a mom, a dad, a son, not to the same extent. But like you said, is if somebody's silent about it, it's not going to help. And it doesn't mean, and you don't do it in a way of, hey, this is me and I want to talk about it. You do it in the sense of, this is what I'm going through and maybe I can help somebody. So I want to commend you for that, because there's a difference, as I said, touching back before, was action versus non-action. And I think if you can connect with one person on this podcast, or if you can have a impact on that, that's the whole thing we talk about. Is every single show we do, we want to have a positive, impactful connection with somebody. And maybe it's not the exact same thing you're going through. Maybe someone is going to say, hey, you know what? My mom or my grandmother's going through cancer, or I lost a brother because of this. And it's that impact. So I want to just commend you for that. But I wanted to ask you, if some people are interested in finding out not only more about your story, but the disease in general, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I'd like them to reach out to me so I can talk to them. But no, the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation is a great way to get in touch and learn more. I actually think the easiest way to find me is I have an Instagram account that is called RLB Life, because those are my initials. R as in Rebecca, L as in Lee, B as in Babcock, Life. And on there, if you want to connect, there's a link to a lot of information about what I've gone through, some fundraising stuff that I try to do to find a cure to this, because 1 in 6 Americans deal with this on some level. 1 in 20 are dealing with it on a pretty extensive level. And the foundation has just been critical for another thing I should say, which is that because this tends to be a silent disease, people don't talk about it. So when you get into a community within a foundation, you meet other people and you have a subset community of people that know they can share information, they can share feelings, they can share doctors. And just to touch back really quickly on silent illnesses, that can be depression, that can be overeating, undereating, that can be, alcohol. There's so many things that there's shame around. And it's important to, the truth will set you free. And it's really important to be honest, and find the right people to share that with. So, I hope through talking about this, I can help other people with IBD, but it goes so far beyond that. It's really anything that you feel like you're suffering in silence, there's no reason to do that. There's going to be somebody for anybody. And if I can't help with IBD stuff, I could probably help with something else, or I know, Chris, you can. So, the idea is just don't go at it alone. There's no reason to.
I think that's so ironic that you touch on the alone part, because that's one of the amazing things through our podcast and through our company is we've connected with so many different people literally throughout the country. We've had 4 different guests so far in different countries throughout the world. But the big thing, as you mentioned, is silence versus together. And I think you touched on a point that I just want to briefly mention is you need to find the right people. And that doesn't mean the people in your life today are not the right people. But the reality is when everybody's unbelievably successful, when you're a millionaire, everybody's going to come, and all old friends and old family. But it's when you're struggling and when you have the need for help, that's when you find out who the real people are in your corner. And I think the reality is in life, we're all going to uncover things about each other, and we're going to encounter so many obstacles. And the question is, who's in your corner during those tough times? And those are the people that you should really hold on to. And I know you mentioned people that were visiting you, and obviously your mom was in your corner and then some, but I think it's important that you're taking action and you're doing something. And like you said, it might not be exactly what you're going through. It might be someone who has another issue that says, you know what, I don't want to not so much always suffer in silence, but I don't want to be in silence. Maybe I'll talk to somebody. So hopefully throughout today's show, you might, or you're hopefully motivated to take action. And it doesn't mean to blast it on Instagram or Facebook or reach out to all your friends, but maybe it means to just reach out to Rebecca and say, hey, was wondering if you'd grab a couple minutes. One of the things I wanted to ask you, a little spin to this, is if you had to define yourself in one word, what do you think that word would be?
Warrior.
That's awesome. We've asked that question to almost all of our guests, and it's always interesting when we get a brand new word. So that's the first time that warrior has been brought up. Now, one of the things we utilize in every show is a daily quote, and I was curious if you have a favorite quote.
I do. It's a Chinese proverb, and it's, I get up, I walk, I fall down, I keep dancing.
Say that again if you wouldn't mind.
I get up, I walk, I fall down, I keep dancing.
I love it. That's awesome. And it's also great when we get new quotes, because a lot of times there are some repetitive quotes, but that's because there's some really great ones out there. But that's the first one we heard that. So we will put that in the show notes as well. Here's an interesting question for you, and we ask this on every show, is if you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Okay, this is totally off topic. This has nothing to do with anything, but it would be JFK. It's the 100th anniversary. He would be 100 years old this year. I want to know what went down on that grassy knoll. I want to know what happened with Marilyn. I just kind of want to chat with him. And that's just a totally side interest hobby of mine. By the way, I should say, backtrack to a favorite quote or a word. Chris is looking at me wearing a tank top that says, "No colon, still rollin'," which is sort of a hashtag of mine. So if you don't find me on Instagram, if you search hashtag "no colon, still rollin" on any social media, I'll probably show up. But that actually kind of speaks to my approach on this. Like, it's not a tragedy. In life, we choose to be victims or victors. And, that whole warrior comes from, I'm not a worrier, I'm a warrior. So
that is awesome. And one thing that Rebecca mentioned before that I did want to just briefly mention is she talked about a outside visual disease that someone sees versus an internal one. And she's not only a beautiful person on the outside, but she's a beautiful person on the inside. And not to date ourselves, but I think I met Rebecca in 1995, or 94, 95. No, yes, 94, 95 initially. And I've known her since then. And as she mentioned, we had our 20th year high school reunion last night, and it was great to see a lot of people. But the big thing is you don't always know what someone's going through. And the comment of silent versus outgoing is not just a verbal thing. It's not just a physical thing. It's people hide things and don't hide things, and people show things in different ways. So I guess one thing I'd like to mention just on the show today is that be willing to be open and be vulnerable to people. And it doesn't mean you ask every single person, all your friends, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? But the reality is sometimes you need to ask a friend, or maybe if you haven't heard from that person in a week or two, maybe what you should do is shoot them a text or shoot them a message. Could be even something as simple as shooting a Facebook message. Say, hey, Rebecca, I haven't seen you or heard from you. Just wanted to make sure everything is okay. So wanted to ask you, Rebecca, before we let you go, do you have any parting words for our listeners you'd like to share?
I first of all want to say I love what you just said, and I think it's incredibly important, especially reflecting on a reunion or any sort of a gathering where you might feel anxious or feel like you're going to be judged or other people are judging you. I walked into that reunion last night. I'm not married. I don't have kids. Most people have both. And I don't have a colon. I could have kind of I don't drink alcohol. Could have walked in there with a lot of anxiety, but I think because of all those things I just shared, I've sort of stripped away the externals, and it's been amazing and remarkable, my ability to connect with people, because I'm very, for lack of a better term, I'm very vulnerable, I'm very open, and the relationships and the connections that I have been able to develop since putting down my guards and really asking people, how are you? And if they say, okay, fine, or great, I know that's not real. And I actually go further and I ask those questions, and my life is so much better because of it.
Wow, that was some pretty intense, but positively intense parting words for our listeners. And last thing I just want to ask you again is, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you?
So just to make it easy, I'm going to say Instagram. And again, my name is Rebecca Babcock, so you can find me that way, or it's RLB Life. And once we connect, there'll be a link to more information about Crohn's and colitis and about fundraising efforts. But I really implore you, if you're interested, to reach out to me about anything, that you feel shame or fear of sharing with somebody else. I'm a blank slate human that you'll probably never see in person. And there's nothing I could enjoy more than helping somebody else.
That is awesome. And those that listen to this show know that at the end of the day, that's what our big message is helping somebody else. And I really appreciate you sharing your story with us. And I look forward to hopefully talking with you soon.
Thank you again. It was awesome.
To sum up today's episode and our theme of the day, warrior, that is exactly who Rebecca is. Dealing with an illness that is not publicly spoken about due to its somewhat uncomfortable topic, Rebecca is making a difference by taking action. Many people talk about doing something, but Rebecca is bringing awareness to this disease, with her number one objective being not only making a difference, but also helping others. One thing Rebecca was very open about was the concept of why me versus why not me. She mentioned that things happen for a reason, and she has clearly decided to be a warrior as opposed to a worrier. With a life-saving emergency surgery, followed by 3 more, Rebecca had every reason to give up, but she didn't. When faced with adversity, she buckled up, put on her beautiful smile, and got after it. She has also been a voice for her disease and a huge advocate for educating the population. Knowledge is power, but knowledge with action is unstoppable. In life, we all face challenges and obstacles. That is a given. What is not a given is how we each handle those challenging times and difficult obstacles. No matter what you are going through, don't go at it alone. Do not suffer in silence. Our call to action today is very simple. Be there for somebody else. If you haven't heard from a family member, a friend, or maybe even a colleague, reach out. Shoot them a text message, or maybe give them a call. I challenge our listeners today, reach out to 2 different people, and do it just because. Just ask them how they're doing, say hello, or maybe invite them to lunch or dinner. Go out of your way for someone else, and go for your greatness.
And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.